And we are live again, day two.
Day two, Chris. So it's a little bit different than day one, I would say. We were ecstatic was the word that I used coming out of day one. And it's really difficult not to be when you land a top tackle and a top edge, arguably, in the draft class with Kayvon Thibodeau and Nevin Neal. Day two is a little bit different. Now, I'm not going to sit here and bash these selections made by Joe Schoen. I don't think that's a wise thing to do. They have a process, and I trust these individuals to execute on the process. But it does seem like some of these picks could be somewhat reaches. And I want to preface all that, Chris, by being just telling the truth and saying that I haven't seen enough of Cordell Flott yet to weigh in on that. I've seen a lot of Derek Stingley Jr., so I guess I saw him by proxy, but I didn't strictly evaluate him. And I'm about a game into Ezeudu, I believe is how you say it right now. And I do appreciate what he offers, but I really did like Sean Ryan and some of those other linemen that were on the board. But Chris, man, let me ask you, what are your overall thoughts on day two for the New York Giants?
My feeling was, especially after day one, when the Giants got, potentially the best edge rusher in the class, definitely my top offensive tackle in the class. It really feels almost like the Giants jumped straight to day three with the types of prospects they got. Like you said, there are things to appreciate about all of these guys, but the profiles on them where, Wan'Dale Robinson is an undersized slot receiver. He was a running back receiver hybrid who kind of played a gadget role at Kentucky, a super high volume guy. He got the ball a ton, but it was mostly, from what I could tell and what I've seen of the games I've watched, it was a ton of like bubble screens or pitches, things like that, where he was put in a lot of catch and run situations. And then with Joshua Ezeudu, again, he played all over that North Carolina line. He's got experience at left tackle, left guard, right guard. He changed positions mid-game, but he has things he needs to work on. He's got great grip strength. He is good at staying attached to defenders, but there are, say, warts with his game. And then Cordell Flott, he is a small, quick, but small, I think he's about 175-pound slot corner who, again, he kind of played all over the LSU defense. And these seem kind of like developmental depth players. And that is kind of the guy you see teams tend to go for on day three. Whereas on day two, you're getting guys you think can start right away.
Yeah, and speaking of getting guys who could start right away, even though he won't, because the team he just went to, the Washington football team, just selected Brian Robinson Jr., who was a real target for the New York Giants. I think they had him in for a top 30 visit. But to go back to Wan'Dale Robinson, I think we should start there to really start to expand upon some of these draft selections made by Big Blue. I liked Wan'Dale Robinson, and I actually had a round 2 grade on him. I didn't discuss him as a potential New York Giant, not because I didn't like him per se, even though I think you're 100% correct. Dude ran a lot of screens. Dude ran a lot of hitches, some seam routes, not really an advanced route tree. He's also somebody who transferred out of Nebraska, went to Nebraska to play under Scott Frost, didn't really mesh there, ends up playing for now the offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams, Liam Cohen, out there at Kentucky. But I had a round 2 grade on him because I do think he's very explosive. He's dynamic with the football in his hands. I think Kadarius Toney is a little bit more dynamic, probably better change of direction, but I didn't think of him as a Giants target because I feel like his skill set is pretty similar to Kadarius Toney's. And not just because they're both smallish. Wan'Dale's considerably smaller than Kadarius Toney, but they both do have really, really good change of direction. I think Toney's a little bit better with that. I think Toney's probably a little bit faster, a little bit more sudden than Wan'Dale Robinson, but I do love the toughness of Wan'Dale Robinson. You'll see him climb the ladder, bro, and he'll make those contested catches through contact. Watch the final drive of the Iowa game, which was their bowl game. It was the bowl game that Kentucky had. And he had 3 huge catches that ended up leading to a win. And that is dependable, which is one of the main traits that Joe Schoen is looking for in their players. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. I didn't love it for the New York Giants, though. There were other guys that were on the board that I think I would have preferred. But now that he is a New York Giant, I welcome him here.
Yeah, at the time, I think I would have liked a guy like Alec Pierce or uh, yeah, Sky Moore. Although again, that's kind of a similar skill set right there. Yeah, obviously Christian Watson, he had already gone. He went just before the Giants drafted, but yeah, there were other guys who uh, they didn't duplicate a skill set that is already on the team. Now, we don't know what the future holds for Kadarius Toney, so maybe redundancy is good in this case. He did have issues staying on the field last year. Yeah, one thing that was interesting to me is that after Robinson was picked, the Giants said, I believe it was Joe Shane, said that he fits what the team wants to do on offense. So to me, that does kind of suggest that the Giants want to run a very run after catch heavy offensive scheme. Sorry, lots of bubble screens, lots of jet sweeps, end arounds, uh, just straight up screens. With the offensive lineman getting out in front, pitch plays, that sort of thing, and that would play to the skill set of Wan'Dale Robinson and also Kadarius Toney. And that kind of offense is also something we have seen the Giants go back to repeatedly with Daniel Jones. That's a lot of what he ran under David Cutcliffe at Duke. We saw the Giants kind of gravitate towards that under Pat Shurmur and then again under Jason Garrett, both years of Garrett. So, that is kind of interesting to me that they brought that up really this early in 2022.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of RPOs, a lot of those quick glance routes where you're going to read one defender, depending on what that defender does. Daniel Jones is going to execute. And if you get Wan'Dale Robinson or Kadarius Toney the football in space, good things can happen. And they're both very explosive. They both have good speed. Wan'Dale Robinson is not a burner, though. He doesn't have that Calvin Austin type of speed. He was tracked down several times on film as I went through. I still like the player. I think the Giants probably could have allocated their assets maybe a little bit better, but who am I? I'm not Joe. I'm not Brian Dable, so I'm going to try to trust the process here and recognize that they did get an explosive playmaker there in the second round. I do, however, before we move on to the round 3 picks, believe the New York Giants got by the Minnesota Vikings there because they traded back twice, which is something that I love, Chris. I always invite trade backs. They end up picking up some day 3 picks, which is excellent. So you can get some real contributors on the team with those day 3 picks, and they need rookie cheap contracts because they're in cap hell right now. But when they traded back twice, it allowed the Minnesota Vikings to leapfrog them and jump them Jerry Reese style at 42 to draft Andrew Booth Jr., who is arguably a top 15 player in this class if he's healthy. He just struggles with injuries, and he just had hernia surgery, which is core muscle surgery that can be problematic. We saw that last year, sports hernia with Aaron Robinson, and it held him out for quite a while. But I think Andrew Booth was on their board, man, and I know he comes from Clemson, a lot of zone coverage out there. I think he can mesh well with a man coverage scheme.
Yeah, Andrew Booth played a fair amount of man coverage. He played some man, he played some press man. He is a super physical cornerback, and like you said, he did struggle with injuries. He had a really, really badly timed quad strain, then had the sports hernia, and he probably will miss a lot of the offseason. But when he's on the field, he is a good corner. He was a first-round corner, and I'm with you. I tend to get the feeling that he is who the Giants had in mind, him or Kyler Gordon. They were both still on the board when the Giants when they executed their second trade back, and man, I feel like they were hoping one of those guys would drop to them.
Yeah, and Brisker did drop to them too. Somebody else we didn't really bring up, and they didn't go in that direction for the 23-year-old safety out of Penn State, who ends up going to Chicago along with who? Kyler Gordon. Chicago's first 2 picks. They end up getting 2 key secondary pieces for that young football team out there. But Wan'Dale Robinson it is in the second round, Chris. Now, Joshua Ezeudu from North Carolina. He's not somebody I watched all that much of. I've seen Sam Howell tape. I've watched North Carolina on Saturdays, and I saw him out there, but I never evaluated him. And I'm just starting to get to his film, and I see somebody who is probably much more suited to play inside really, really good grip strength, very, very powerful upper body. There were times where he shot his punch and you could see he jolted defensive linemen backwards. He has that type of power so far through the film that I've seen that I really like. At tackle, I feel like his technique isn't always consistent. There are times where his feet don't really kick out with him, and just the overall footwork kick slide is a little bit herky-jerky. And there were also times where he just kind of shot up out of his stance and his center of gravity rose, which allowed him to get bull rushed. But he also has some pretty good tape against Jermaine Johnson. I just think that the offensive tackles, at offensive tackle, it's not ideal. You move him inside to guard with that kind of power and the anchor that he displayed and the grip strength. I feel like those are really good things. Now, I'm going to have an in-depth breakdown in the coming week on Ezeudu at Big Blue View. Please head on over there and check it out. I'm just in the preliminary phases of watching his film. But with all that said, all those traits that are really intriguing still seem like it was a little bit of a reach, but that's also coming from like the media side of things. I just liked a lot of other players that were at similar positions, specifically Sean Ryan out of UCLA, who also just has incredible grip strength and hands and just absolute menace if you want to have him blocked down. He's never played guard. He was a strict left tackle, whereas Ezeudu has played several different positions. What were your overall thoughts on Ezeudu?
Yeah, I saw a lot of the same things. He is definitely a strong, powerful player. His leverage, that was kind of inconsistent for me. Yeah, I could see where he could be a people mover on the inside when he plays with good leverage. But I also saw instances where, the knees would straighten, the hips would rise, and then, the center of gravity is up and he could be moved himself. And, then you get into all sorts of bad things of either getting put on skates or you're lunging at defenders. And those are things he's going to have to clean up. Yeah, I love the versatility, the way he was able to move around that offensive line. Yeah, even mid-game, where if they had an injury or, I don't know, some guy's shoe came untied, he could go from, left guard to left tackle to right tackle to left guard to right guard. He kind of shuffled all over that line. But also, I do agree with you. There were guys I liked better. I loved Sean Ryan. I loved the projection of him inside to a guard. Dylan Parham out of Memphis. I loved what I saw from him at center, over the course of the draft process. I thought he could be a really high ceiling center where, maybe the Giants could take a Dylan Parham and sit him behind Feliciano for a year. And then all of a sudden you've got a young, athletic, powerful center. Yeah, Jamari Salyer out of Georgia. He has played all over that Georgia offensive line. He was left tackle last year. He's played all 5 positions. Yeah, I think I would have had him above Ezeudu. Yeah, even somebody like a Darian Kennard, who I do not believe has been drafted yet. Yeah, I would have expected him or Luke Fortner, the holder of, I believe they said 2 master's degrees.
Yeah, he went, though. Fortner went before Ezeudu in the top of the 3rd round to Jacksonville, and I was a little pissed about that because I'm a big fan of that. And honestly, with Kennard, I never really saw it with Kennard. Like, I'm again, I still have to watch a little bit more film on Ezeudu, but Kennard was wildly inconsistent with his hands. He was just a big body with slow feet who's probably going to have to be moved inside the guard. I wouldn't be shocked if I like Ezeudu's film better than Kennard, but he's going to have to do a lot to probably surpass the Sean Ryans and even the Dylan Parhams of the world.
Yeah, that's where I was going with Darian Kennard, is inside to guard. I think, just he didn't have the feet to play on the edge at tackle, kind of an Eric Flowers type situation where maybe if you don't give him quite as much ground to cover, he'd be able to sync up his feet and hands better. But
Eric Flowers. Jeez, I'm sorry to cut you off. It's just every time I hear that, I think that the Giants spent a top 10 pick on this guy. I'm just like, I still can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
Speaking of something bad that happened, though, Chris, the Jets just went with Jeremy Ruckert.
Your man.
I'm a big Jeremy Ruckert fan. Dude, they signed like Uzama and Tyler Conklin. Like they can roll out 13 personnel and be effective. And they just drafted Garrett Wilson. So, I mean, good for Zach Wilson to have a bunch of different weapons down there. But, yeah, man, I mean, they picked Ezeudu as well over linebackers that I really, really thought could be impact players here in New York. Long linebackers like Chad Muma, who was selected a few picks after. And then Christian Harris, who converted defensive back. He's somebody who struggles a little bit with processing still, but still high upside because of his athletic ability. But then with Cordell Flott, bro, they drafted him at 81. Nakobe Dean was drafted at 83 to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just see 2-3 years into the future, us being like, oh my God, I can't believe we got to deal with this Nakobe Dean guy. And he was right there for us and we passed him up. And that's no shot at Flott. That rhymed, alliteration. But I can see that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like a flashback to last year with Micah Parsons, where you have this guy who just on the tape, he leaps off of the field. And there are questions. The Giants pass. He goes to a division rival and off. I know there are health questions with Nakobe Dean. It sounds like he had a chest, a pec injury, which might need surgery. He was maybe putting it off or, whatever. But yeah, at 83 overall, that is, if that hits, that is a hell of a lot of value for a team that has already been entirely too smart this year.
I know. And it's so funny and ironic because Philadelphia is known as the team that consistently neglects the linebacker position. And here they get Nakobe Dean at this area of the draft. But the medicals, they seem to be a real concern. I can't weigh in on that. And I haven't watched enough Cordell Flott to give an honest opinion. But I do know he's a 6 foot, 10th percentile arm length, 175-pound cornerback. That's just those measurements. They do concern me on the face of it. Still need to do more work to finalize those concerns to see if they will be substantiated by what we see on the film. But that's those kind of outliers typically don't get drafted on day 2 unless they have super high upside. And 2 more players just went off the board, Chris. Channing Tindall to the Dolphins and Leo Chanel to the Chiefs.
The Chiefs.
Ugh.
Yeah. It's kind of deflating to see all of these guys that we had looked at and say, oh, this would be a great Giant. He's going to be a great Giant. Nick Cross, he went to the Indianapolis Colts at, 92nd overall. And here the Giants are. They still only have 2 actual safeties on the roster. Now, maybe that's something Wink Martindale is envisioning with Cordell Flott, where, yes, he was primarily a slot corner for LSU. But he did spend some time at safety. He spent some time outside after Derek Stingley got hurt. Yeah, maybe he could be kind of a roving nickel defender or something like that. Yeah, from what I have watched of him, he is very quick. He is also small, and his size does show up where he has to be a drag down tackler to get guys down. You see him trying to play through receivers and receivers almost kind of ignoring him, but he's very physical. He is very aggressive. And I know that definitely appeals to Wink Martindale. And he did spend a fair amount of time in man coverage. So, I'll be interested to see how the Giants use Flott. It is interesting to me that he's their 3rd slot corner because they still have Darnay Holmes. They still have Aaron Robinson, who maybe their contingency plan for Bradbury involves moving Robinson to the outside.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. I don't think Robinson ever played outside. Maybe before he transferred to, I believe it was Central Florida. I believe he was at Alabama. Maybe he played outside there some. I don't recall seeing that. But yeah, the draft picks today have, all of these guys have traits that are worth developing. But man, the picks and fits they are very curious.
Yeah, they're a little curious, to be honest. We had John Doe 230 say LSU fans seem to like Flott. He played most at slot. This is going to get really old really fast, but kind of. Well, LSU also ran the defense where if it was like 3rd down and long or 2nd down and long, obvious passing situations, they would align like 4 defensive backs off coverage perceived at the snap and kind of like a chains type of look where they would all be at the sticks, and then two would drop into deep half. And Flott would sometimes be one of those persons to drop into the deep half. So he has interchangeable skill set. I'm excited to get into his film. I'm excited to do a little bit more work on Ezeudu. And as for Wan'Dale Robinson, I think they got a good football player. I think it's similar to Kadarius Toney. I think there were probably other players I would have preferred, but I still think that he's going to be a highly utilized asset within Brian Dable's system. And they obviously have a plan for him. They obviously love him, because why else would you draft him in the second round?
Yeah, I should hope they have a plan for him. Yeah, I hope it isn't a case of the Giants traded back, they got, as you put it, with their targets being drafted before them, and then they just kind of, well, we have to use our pick, and kind of more or less defaulted to Robinson. I hope that isn't the case. Yeah, I hope they were targeting him. There's a good reason why they were targeting him, and they have a clear vision going forward.
I wonder if they wanted Christian Watson, and then he ended up going to the Packers at 34. And that's probably when maybe the Giants got on the phone and said, look, we value everybody similarly. This big cluster of players we value similarly. Let's just drop back and get more assets. And that's what maybe could have happened. Just, Christian Watson is also a raw receiver who is explosive, kind of like Wan'Dale Robinson, almost better than Christian Watson, but I think Christian Watson just has a lot more upside, a ton more upside, because of obviously his physical gifts and his athletic ability. But you watch his film playing at the FCS level, Christian Watson didn't jump out really that much.
Yeah, part of that was the North Dakota State offense, where they ran the ball. That was what they wanted to do. Even Christian Watson was almost more of a running back than a receiver for them. They, again, like Wan'Dale Robinson, he played a lot of catch and run football, where they get the ball to him on screens, on bubble screens, quick timing passes, and then just let him use that insane track speed he has to just run away from FCS defenses, when they weren't just handing the ball off, because they did that a ton.
Yeah. Well, Chris, before we get out of here, now we have the third round that has concluded with Danny Gray being selected, the SMU speedster, to the San Francisco 49ers. And we're sitting here. The Giants have a pick. I think it's at 112 and 114, with Washington kind of sandwiched in between, if I'm not mistaken. There's some interesting names, bro. There's still some impact names. Perrion Winfrey, the Senior Bowl MVP from Oklahoma, is still around. A very long-armed, physical type of run defender, or I wouldn't even say run defender. He can play the run, but he also has a good first step. He played nose at Oklahoma. He's probably more of a three-technique, four-eye, moving around the line of scrimmage type of dude. Tariq Woolen, the UTSA long cornerback with all the tools in the world, still around. Isaiah Spiller, Texas A&M running back. Zion McCollum, another long cornerback who's really athletic out of Sam Houston State, still around. So there's still some really, really interesting dudes. Running back position, you still got Zamir White, still got Damian Pierce out of Florida. So, I'm looking forward to it still.
Yeah. Also, Cade Otton, tight end out of Washington. He hasn't played a ton lately, just between, COVID shortening the Pac-12 season, and then, missing a couple games here and there. But I thought he was a pretty good all-around tight end. He could catch, he could block. There were some people who had him as the top tight end in the class. Yeah, there's also Kobe Bryant, the other cornerback out of Cincinnati. If you want a guy who is, bigger, longer, very experienced. I believe he was a fifth-year senior there. And then, there's still more offensive linemen out there if the Giants want to circle back around. Got Darian Kennard, who talked about, is still there. Max Mitchell, my guy, is still there. Jamari Salyer is still there. And also, Khalil Shakir, wide receiver out of Boise State. Like you said, there are a bunch of very interesting players, guys who can help fill out the Giants roster, who may not be starters, but they can at least be role players and give the Giants some value without having to pay them a veteran contract.
I want to look at the linebackers real quick, because I know there was a run on linebackers there at the back end of the third round while we were doing this. According to ESPN, the top-ranked linebacker is Brandon Smith out of Penn State. Don't love to see that. Obviously, you have Damone Clark out of LSU, but he's dealing with his injury. I think DeMarco Jackson out of App State is an interesting type of linebacker. And then Darian Beavers, who just screams out of Cincinnati, just screams, hey, I should play for the New England Patriots because he is just massive, dude. He reminds me so much of like a Donta Hightower or a Kyle Van Noy, like that type of linebacker. So there's still some solid dudes here. Some of them, they have their warts, like Malcolm Rodriguez. Love his tape. He's 5'11" now. Like, that's really small. And he doesn't have the same kind of, I would say, tape as in Nakobe Dean, obviously playing at 2 different schools. Malcolm Rodriguez at Oklahoma State. But yeah, there's still guys here, Chris, that I'm interested in. And Sam Howell, somebody the Giants had a visit with. So maybe they go in that direction too.
And you didn't bring up JoJo Domann.
I did not bring up Mr. JoJo. JoJo can technically be he's a linebacker. He's a nickelback. He used to be a safety. He's a very versatile piece. Somebody who I honestly think would fit well with Wink Martindale because he can do so many different things for you. And he has good tape at Nebraska.
Yeah. And hey, the Giants picked up additional picks tomorrow. So yeah, we still don't have to worry about the 7th round, but got 2 picks in the 4th round, 3 picks in the 5th round, and then 1 6th round pick. So yeah. There's things to look forward to.
It's going to be a busy day for us. And in the 5th round, they have back-to-back picks at 146 and 147. So that's going to be cool. Because I always love when a team has that. And it's like, oh, well, they can get 2 of these guys. And if you don't like the first one, there's a second one waiting there for you. But
yeah.
All right, Chris, anything else?
It's 11:30. I think we're pretty good.
All righty, man. Well, this was the Big Blue View Chris and Nick's show, live show here, recapping the second day of the 2022 NFL Draft. The New York Giants select a speedy wide receiver, Wan'Dale Robinson, Joshua Ezeudu, an interior offensive lineman who has played tackle. And then they also get Cordell Flott, slot cornerback, undersized in terms of weight, but still a solid addition to a secondary that needs fresh bodies. Alrighty, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on the Chris and Nick show. For Nick Filato, Chris Flum, we're signing out. Please head on over to Big Blue View and check us out.